I tested the 000 KMZ Helios 44-2, the one that was supposedly reserved for Communist Party leaders with stricter quality control than any other copy. And I found 3 things that I didn't include in my previous video. So in this video, I'm going to show you 2 issues that doesn't belong in this lens and a West German mail order catalog that might collapse the entire 000 story. When I opened the 000 lens previously, I found something interesting that has to do with the quality control claim. Now to be clear, this wasn't about sharper lens or better coatings. I've tested the lens in the previous video side by side with another KMZ Helios 44-2, but the 000 was never just about optics. The reason collectors and filmmakers often look for it specifically because many believe it was made to a higher standard. Many say it has better build quality. So when I take a look inside, I noticed something near the corkscrew slots. These are loose metal shavings found around the slots and spread across other aperture ring components. From what I can tell, the corkscrew slots were drilled after the lens was already assembled, which means whatever came off the drill stayed inside. If this were any other Helios 44-2, I probably wouldn't have given it much thought. I've opened enough Helios 44-2 lenses to know that this isn't unusual. I see the same thing across different factory logo and production year. But this is the 000, and the one thing that was supposed to make it different was better build quality with stricter quality control. But it looks exactly the same as others.
Jadi kini sama-sama kita saksikan dan menikmati persembahan istimewa yang menampilkan alunan merdu dan saxophone.
But the metal shavings weren't the only thing I found. When I took a closer look at this aperture ring, I immediately noticed that the ring doesn't sit straight. When I first saw this, my initial thought was that the corkscrews were loose. The ring had simply moved out of place and tightening them would sort it out. But when I was reassembling the lens, I realized that wasn't the issue. The slots themselves were drilled at that angle, which means the lens was assembled this way and passed quality control. Does it affect the image? No. Does it affect how the aperture ring operates? Not really. But a crooked aperture ring is the kind of thing that gets caught in quality control. It's visible and it's obvious. If the lens had this logo, then it would be immediately blamed for lower build quality and poor Soviet quality control. But this is the 000. If this lens was made for Communist Party leaders and other VIPs, it shouldn't have made it past inspection. But it did anyway. And here's where it gets very interesting. Because a comment behind a random username on the internet is one thing, physical evidence is another. The entire premise of the 000 is based on one claim. It claims that these lenses were made exclusively for Communist Party leaders and other VIPs. Reserved, not available to the general public. That's what makes them worth hunting for, according to the story. So I want to show you something I found in a scan catalog from the 1970s. Foto-quelle was a West German mail order company, and in this catalog there is a 000 KMZ Helios 44-2 attached to a Revuflex E, which is essentially an export version of the Zenith E camera, sold openly to the West German consumer market. No, I'm not a Soviet historian. In fact, history is my weakest subject in school. But if the 000 was genuinely reserved for Communist Party leaders, and KMZ was shipping them to West Germany in a consumer catalog, then somebody in Krasnogorsk had a lot of explaining to do. All of my findings I've showed in this video, the hidden metal shavings, the crooked aperture ring, the West German catalog, none of it tells you how the 000 actually performs. So I tested it side by side with a common KMZ Helios 44 too. If you are wondering whether 000 is actually better, you'll want to see what I found.